Good afternoon, everyone. We are now joining the first Adoption Tuesday International Conference. I am the moderator for today's conference, Choi Hyung-suk. Nice to meet you all. I am the president of the INTRI. For the domestic and overseas adoptees, as well as the birth families and unwed mothers, since May 11 this year, we declared the Adoption Tuesday among the participation of the coalition. And now we are having the international conference on the first Adoption Tuesday on September 9th. And we have the topic of the issues of records and identity. We are also providing the Zoom webinar as well as YouTube live streaming services for the conference today. For the past 9 years, from 2011, for the single mothers and unwed mothers as well as overseas adoptees, we have commemorated the Single Moms Day, and also with the coalitions with the rights advocacy. And we have also designated the May 10th as the day to commemorate with the political willingness to put the more best efforts in nurturing the child and the children in the original families. So from the May 11 this year, we have renamed the day as the Adoption Truth Day to listen to as well as to share more truths and the ideas for their life and their stories. So from now on, let us start the first Adoption Truth Day International Conference. For today's conference, we will have the opening remarks to talk about the testimonies and the stories of the adoptees. For the first and session 1, the topic of the issues of the records and identity. We have also the keynote speech before the session 1. And for the session 2, with the role of the state in adoption, we are also joined by the 2 presenters. And for the last session, we'll have the panel discussion with a lot of the panelists from the different backgrounds. And lastly, we also have the closing ceremony to wrap up the conference today. For the conference today, we are providing the online services on the Zoom webinar and the YouTube at the same time due to the outbreak of the COVID-19. Despite these challenges, now we have a lot of the participation from the more than 200 the participants from 15 different countries. Thank you very much for your participation. For the opening of the international conference today, on the first Adoption Tuesday, we are going to join the Pastor Kim Do-hyun, the president of the Korea, for his opening remarks. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon. I am Pastor Do-hyun Kim, President of Korea. Actually, this conference was planned to be held on the 11th of May, but due to COVID-19, we are hosting this conference today as an untagged conference. I am very delighted to meet you all today. The world is suffering from COVID-19, and thank you for joining us despite the many challenges. First, I'd like to introduce the conference hosts and organizers. International adoptees, domestic adoption agencies, organizations of birth families and unwed mothers, as well as the many organizations working in solidarity with civil organizations. Also, 정춘숙 전, 영교서, 병원 강, and Jongyun Choi, National Assembly members of the Democratic Party of Korea, are co-hosting today's conference. I once again express my gratitude to these members. Also, Chun-suk Chung, special thanks to you as you have reached your hands out to us first. Today's conference is sponsored by Family for Every Child, that is a non-profit organization for children's human rights headquartered in London. There are 40 members, and we, Co-Root, is also a member of Family for Every Child. Thank you, Amanda Griffith, for your support. Let me tell you why we're hosting this conference. Actually, the 11th of May was the day for this conference initially because that day is Adoption Day. With governments and adoption agencies, Adoption Day has been centered on adoptive parents and celebrated promoting adoption. However, Adoption Day, designated by the government, should equally shed light on the adoption triad, including adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents. We believe that overseas adoptees and unwed mothers and their birth parents' experience of parting and loss should be sympathized, and, taking a step further, cure their scars and reform the institutional flaws. That was our belief. However, in the scope of Adoption Day did not include overseas adoptees, birth families, and unwed mothers, and had no room for discourse over their human rights. So, for the past 9 years, from 2011, we have celebrated this day as Single Moms Day. Single moms, especially unwed mothers, we wanted to enable them to take the courage and create an environment where they can rear their own child. Finally, in 2018, the government acknowledged that the children should be raised in the original family rather than sending them off for adoption. And the 10th of May has been designated as the Single Parent Family Day and celebrated this since 2019. Also, the environment for unwed mothers are getting better, and the media as well as all corners of society are now having a positive change towards the perception for unwed mothers. We see this as the results of the 9-year movement for Single Moms Day, so we put an end to celebrating the day as of last year. Instead, starting from this year, we are celebrating the Adoption Truths Day and have issued the Declaration on Adoption Truths Day. The theme of today's conference is issues of adoption justice, issues of records and identity. Adoptees have the right to know the truth of their birth and have access to the correct records on their early lives before adoption. That's part of their existence and should be an official document created by the government. This is part of their existence and is an essential element to their life journey in achieving self-integrity. However, before the special adoption law has been revised in 2011, for 60 years, adoption was not a public duty. Rather, it was a business or industry of private adoption agencies. There were two core problems to this. One was orphanization, and one was proxy adoption. Orphanization was a legal and institutional adoption practice by the sending country, and de facto proxy adoption was brought out by the receiving countries. Such laws and institutions violating human rights led to poor records on adoptees and shadowed the process of establishing adoptee identities. And this is leading to a tragedy where adoptees are repatriated back to Korea. So we will be having testimonies, presentations, and discussions at today's conference, and I hope that we can have thoughtful discussions on adoptee records and identity rights, and also investigate the relevant states. I would like to express my gratitude to those who made this conference possible, those sharing your personal stories, the stories that are kept as a private matter and be protected. You are here to share them with us today. Thank you to adoptees with great respect. Thank you very much. I believe that the power to change history come from your voices. Presenters and panelists, thank you very much. And thank you to the interpreters from Equi Korea. And many parties have made unwavering efforts to host this conference. Thank you to the presidents of the organizations working in solidarity, staff members at Co-Root, volunteers, and the IXCO technical team. I hope that this conference can be valuable to all of you. And amidst COVID-19, I wish you all to stay healthy, safe, and peaceful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks, Pastor Kim. Further to today's conference, we have also done a lot of the ways which was also explained by the Pastor Kim. And next, we are going to invite the next speaker who has contributed a lot of the time and the dedication to prepare the international conference today. And the person will be delivered the welcoming remarks. The president of the Root Table, Miss Chun Hyun-suk, as well as the president of the KUMFA, Mr. Kim Do-kyung. I am Chun Hyun-suk, as introduced, and I am the president of the Root Table for birth mothers. I believe that the life array seems to give us variables which makes me nervous and curious. To spend a normal life, we had a lot of the ways, but nowadays we are seeing the emergence of the COVID-19 around the world. So still, we really wanted to go and visit the places and to meet a lot of the people as we did in the past. And to be honest, the first mothers who sent their children for adoption have even greater feelings of regret. They also wonder and they feel sorry about the adoption because they missed the opportunities to really see and touch their children. So now we see that. I really like to express my gratitude to giving these opportunities to share their ideas. And I think that this conference will be also very valuable and very important for the first mothers as well. So I think that we can also make the future together. For all of you, really want to see the growth. And also, this also goes the same for mothers as well. From the perspective of the mothers, towards their children and for their kids, they really wanted to really change the future. And by reminding of the past, they really want to deliver the way and the journey for the development and the growth for their children. And I think that the adoption as one of the prominent challenges in which that we have faced a lot of the issues and a lot of the worries in the past. Now this conference will be an opportunity to really share the truth, to talk about the challenges and issues today. And I think that just the brave action and attitudes from one mothers can also make the transformations for the better future for all the mothers here. And my also special thanks go to the adoptees, and I feel really grateful and honored to be with you today. And I think that with the spirit of the mothers, I really welcome you everyone. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I am Kim Do-kyung from Korean Unwed Mothers Families Association. We should not repeat the same history. Thank you for your interest to this theme, and thank you for joining us on this historic day. For the past 9 years, adoptees, foreign adoptees, and unwed mothers associations and other organizations have been celebrating Single Moms Day. Rather than sending off their children to adoption, there were activities to stop international adoption and create a better future in Korea. This was something for the future. And from this year, we are celebrating the day as Adoption Truth Day, and we're focusing more on overseas adoptees. There are still many past stories that we need to reveal, and many truths that we also have to reveal. We cannot take care of the truth by simply forgetting the past and going forward. On this Adoption Truth Day, the stories of mothers who had to send off their children without the protection of the state and families, and children who do not know where they're being sent with falsified documents. We now need to cry with them, apologize, and fix our wrongdoings. We should not repeat the same history. Recently, Korea has been experiencing the COVID-19 situation, and it seems like Korea is boasting itself as if Korea is an advanced economy. However, it is still a country where the country cannot protect their children and women who want to raise their own child. Now, as we have done well in the COVID-19 situation, we need to be more responsible in other aspects as well. Thank you, and welcome again to this meaningful event. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the two speakers for the welcoming speeches. And also for the conference today, we are also joined by the participants from the different countries as well. And we'll be joined by the CEO of the Family for Every Child, Amanda Griffith, for her congratulatory remarks. So let's see the messages via the video clip.
Honoured guests, I'm the CEO of Family for Every Child, Amanda Griffith. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you to this international conference, and I'm only sorry that I cannot be with you in person to listen to your discourse and support your actions. The topic of adoption justice and the importance of accurate and public records, and for adoptees to know their own identity, are fundamental human rights. Family for Every Child is an international alliance of 40 leading local civil society organisations, and Co-Root is our member in South Korea. Co-Root brings a spotlight to the issue of the 160,000 children who've been internationally adopted from South Korea, and the need to focus on local responses, for example, single parents and when being supported, and when necessary, providing domestic adoption. Through our alliance, Co-Root is able to give this important topic international visibility and impact on the lives of internationally adopted children globally. Family for Every Child believes that investing in families has to take primacy in any government programme of child welfare. We support the call for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on adoption practices and would emphasise that this commission should engage children as well as adults with lived experience of adoption. Family for Every Child is in solidarity with the adoptee community in South Korea, including adopted individuals and their original families. We support the Adoption of Truth Day Declaration. I hope you have a productive and thought-provoking event, and I look forward to hearing the recommendations and actions that are agreed during the day. Hoping you all stay safe during these very difficult times. All the very best, Amanda.
네, 이렇게 중요하고 소중한 자리에
So, thank you for Family for Every Child for enabling and supporting
이런
this
자리에서
event.
해외 입양인들의 목소리를
So sharing the
세상에 많이
voices
공유하는
of
것도
overseas
의미가 있지만
adoptees is
또
important, but
우리나라에서 정책을
policymakers'
입안하는 국회의원분들의 관심과
interest
참여도는
and
굉장히
participation
중요합니다.
within Korea is also
이번에
very important.
더불어민주당 국회의원
The
네
National
분께서도
Assembly
함께
members
공동주최를
of
해주셨는데요.
the
가장
Democratic
먼저
Party
이
of Korea,
컨퍼런스에 힘이 되어
four
주시기도 하시고
members have
과거에도
co-hosted
신년하는
this
날 늘
event.
함께 해주셨습니다. 먼저
First of all,
더불어민주당
let me welcome
보건복지위원회
the
소속
chair of National
정춘숙
Assembly's Gender
의원님을
Equality and Family
영상으로
Committee
연결해서
for
축사를
her
들어보도록
congratulatory
하겠습니다.
remarks. Good afternoon. I am the chair of the National Assembly's Gender Equality and Family Committee. Adoption Justice, Issues of Records and Identity. The first Adoption Truth Day International Conference is hosted today. Congratulations. I would like to express my gratitude to President Kim Do-hyun as well as all staff members who have worked so hard to make today's conference possible. Thank you very much. So we are celebrating for the first time the Adoption Truth Day we have been celebrated this day on the 11th of May. It has been called the Adoption Day and Single Moms Day, and I think the changes in these names show how the perception towards adoptions have changed over time. There are many adoptees who have been ignored in the past, but the Adoption Truth Day is a new movement that's trying to focus more on the adoptees. According to statistics, for 60 years, approximately 170,000 Korean children have been sent off to other countries for adoption. This is a very important human rights issue. They have been massively sent off overseas by a private organization without the protection of the state and families. So this is a violation of human rights, but going further, they want to find their identity, but later on face many painful situations due to poor records of themselves. Roy Joy Park, who's a presenter today, has been keeping in touch with her birth mother due to her, according to her records, but later on found out through DNA tests that they have noticed that they're not families. So I hope that this can be a meaningful conference for all of you. And in terms of protecting human rights of adoptees, I hope we can come up with discussions on political policies and institutions, and also find ways to support and allow access to records. Once again, thank you for joining us today, the distinguished guests, as well as those of you joining through online. And until we find the identity and justice, I will do my best at the National Assembly. Thank you.
네, 정춘숙 의원님 축사를 듣고 나니까 좀
After listening to the congratulatory remarks, the lawmaker John, I really hope and really looking forward to your more support. And next, we'll be also joined by the Choi Jong-un, the member of the Health and Welfare Committee from the National Assembly member. And we'll be also joined by Seo Young-kyo, as well as the Kang Byung-won for their congratulatory remarks via the video.
네, 최종현 국회의원님 아닌가요? 의원님 먼저 맞습니다. 네, 최종현 의원님 거 틀어야죠.
Good afternoon. I am Choi Jong-eun, a member of the National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee from the National Assembly. First of all, I really wanted to participate in the international conference today, but due to the outbreak of COVID-19, I couldn't make it today. Taking these opportunities, I'd like to express all the gratitude to the participants as well as the host for preparing the international conference today. My special thanks also go to all presenters and speakers and panelists as well. And I'm also like to express the gratitude to the host, the representatives, for hosting today's conference. And now today, we are going to share the ideas and the issues on the identity as well as the records for the adoptees. And now we are seeing that a lot of the importance being attended around the world. But still, we are seeing some challenges at the same time. On behalf of the government, we have also done a lot of the efforts and for the policy makings as well. And I think that it's a time and the urgent need for the government to put the pivotal role for solving the challenges and the issues for the adoptees. Now, in this regard, I also really hope that for the rights of the expression as well as the sharing the ideas on the relevant topics, I think that we need to make changes together. It's a time for the domestic and the overseas adoptees to be more involved in our society as well. And once again, I'd like to express all the guests and the participants today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the congratulatory remarks, Mr. Choi Jong-eun.
말씀드렸다시피 더불어민주당 행안위원장이신 서영교
Next, let's welcome Young Kyo-seo, Chair of the Public Administration and Security Committee. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Young Kyo-seo, Chair of the Public Administration and Security Committee. We are celebrating the first Adoption Truth Day International Conference, and I wholeheartedly congratulate you for that. And I express my gratitude to all the staff members and participants who are joining this conference today. For the past 9 years, from 2011, we have been celebrating Single Moms Day on the 11th of May to create a society where unwed mothers can raise their own child, and have been listening to the voices of many organizations working in solidarity. And thanks to these efforts, the government has designated the 10th of May as the Single Parent Family Day. Thank you for your support and efforts for this. Today's theme is Adoption Justice, Issues of Records and Identity. And we will be talking about the truths and issues of identity at today's conference. So the right to find one's identity is a very basic human right. In the past, now we have to listen to the voices of the adoptees. We need to protect the rights of the adoptees. And we will make efforts and join efforts to make this happen. So the Adoption Truth Day International Conference, talking of the issues of records and identities, I hope that we can have thoughtful discussions. And as the chair of the Public Administration and Security Committee, I will support you through policies and institutions. Adoptees, adoptive families, and the adoptees, the adoptive parents, and the birth families all should come together to really make practical change. It is time for us to all join our efforts together. Once again, I support you and I will do my best at the National Assembly. Thank you very much.
서영교 의원님 언제나 늘 씩씩하게
Thank you for your
감사드립니다.
energized remarks.
해외 입양인의 입양 기록을 열실
We were also talking about the issues as well. And before that, we'd like to invite the lawmaker Kang Byung-won for his congratulatory messages via the video. Good afternoon. I am the Kang Byung-won from the Democratic Party of Korea from the National Assembly. And now I would like to congratulate the opening of the first Adoption Tuesday International Conference. For the past 60 years, more than 160,000 children were adopted to the overseas. And now we had a lot of the sorrowful the past because in which the Korean government did not really take the full responsibilities into protecting and advocating the rights of adoptees. And now it's the reality and the past wrongdoing for the government. And now I believe that for the protecting and advocating the rights of adoptees, it's a really urgent need and the time for the government to take the actions. We also need to listen to the voices of the experts and academia to solve these challenges. We also need to define the challenges and issues for the policies of the adoptees. I really hope that we can also make very favorable outcomes. I once again congratulate the opening of the conference today. Thank you.
네. 코로나 사태가 아니었으면 의원님
Without the outbreak of COVID-19, we could gather together with more participants and a very large meeting hall. But with the outbreak of COVID-19, we were really able to get the video clips for their congratulatory messages via the video. We are also now being joined by other participants from different countries around the world via the Zoom and the YouTube as well. So I think that today's conference will be more meaningful at this time and this point of the time. And I believe that the simultaneous interpretation is also being provided. And due to the voices of the interpreters, there may be some people saying that some of you cannot really listen to the Korean, but please also adjust the volumes between the Korean and English for the simultaneous interpretation services. Once again, I'd like to start the first Adoption Tuesday International Conference.
지금 대기하고 계시는 분들이 보이실까요?
Can you also see some other participants on the screen? Thank you very much for your great participation today. Thank you.
이제 본격적으로 시작을
So,
해볼게요.
from now on, by opening the international conference,
기록할 때에는
for the keynote speech, the artists, activists, as well as archivists, Kimura Byul, Natalie, Muru-an will be deliver his keynote speech with the topic of the To You Korea Mother Nation for 20 minutes.
대사를 하신 김도영 목사님께서
And Pastor Kim Do-yeon, who delivered an opening remarks, will also deliver his introduction. Thank you.
많은 분들이 좀 궁금해 하실 것 같은데요.
So, you might be wondering why we're changing microphones here, but that's the standard in Korea in order to overcome COVID-19. So, the mic shouldn't be used by more than two persons. So, I know it may be a little awkward, but for the safety of everyone, we're doing that. So, we will begin the conference with this keynote speech. And today's keynote speaker is Kimura Byul Natalie Lemuan. And we're honored to have Ze here. And as the planning committee, we are very honored to have Ze here today. Personally, I have been calling Ze Natalie, But in the past, I used to call Ze Jomi Hee, which is the Korean name, but I think I'll just call Ze Natalie. Natalie has been born in 1963 in Busan, Korea, and has been adopted to a Belgium family and grew up there. Shall I call you Kimura?
김우라 별 선생님은
And when Ze was 17 years old, Natalie or Kimura made a film on the issue of related to adoption identity and debuted as a film director. And in 1993, Ze has been working as a film artist, writer, and an activist for the human rights of adoptees who returned to Korea. And in 2006, Ze moved to Montreal, Canada. And Ze is living as a global citizen, going beyond borders, a feminist, diaspora, and a unique sexual orientation with multiple identities, and is dealing with all these themes in the work of Kimura. As a conceptual painter, filmmaker, digital artist, Ze is also actively engaged in adoption-related archivist. In Korea, Ze is the major first-generation leader for overseas adoptee rights movements and has been inspiring numerous adoptees. Natalie, thank you very much for your efforts. Now, Natalie will come and give the speech. Though this is non-face-to-face, please welcome Natalie with a big, big hand. Please. Welcome.
It's a bit weird for me to announce it. Oh. 네, 안녕하세요. 감사합니다. I just want to thank everyone who organized this first conference because I think it's very meaningful after maybe almost 30 years of activism back in Korea. Maybe 25 years. So I just want to start with that image maybe you see. It's like the man, the Korean man there was the first known adopted in Italy in the 17th century or 18th century. So after you can see like many babies being sent, I think it was in the 60s by airplane. And then after you have an image of two guys, seems to be adopted, and it's Theater Pay from Minnesota. So it just like to show a bit the mood of what Korean adoption is in my point of view. That's maybe for me very strong images that as an adult adoptee, wanting to know my history is part of what I belong to. So I will start that. Wait, I think I have to go through this. Okay. Can I use, yeah? Wait. Okay. So I want to take 1 minute of silence for all the adoptees who commit suicide and couldn't make it to today. So if you can take a moment for them and think about maybe friends you've lost on the way, people who couldn't make it, couldn't understand or overcome the pain or the unknown information about the background. I lost many people, many adoptees from when I was 15, 10 years old. I heard many adoptees who commit suicide from Korea when I was living in Belgium. So I was maybe teenager and I knew that life was hard and will not be easier over in my 20s. When I was living in Korea, I heard many adoptees also committing suicide and it's still going on. So I think we have really to re-question how adoption is made. So if you can take a minute and think about them. I don't know if I will calculate exactly 1 minute, but just think of them, take time for that. I know that 1 minute is not long for in the life of someone, but that minute can change everything. So I will go to the next video that maybe to put you in the mood of what many adoptees maybe are, many overseas Korean adoptees who've been adopted to Caucasian families, because just to let you know that 99% of adoptees from Korea are adopted in white families, in Caucasian families. And in Western country, we are not adopted in the Middle East or in Africa or Southeast Asia. So it's like you have to think about that. So if you can put the video, it would be nice. Thank you. It's only 100 seconds. So.
Who are you? You don't know. And where were you? And what did you have? Who are you? You don't know. What was your name? It couldn't have been Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. They don't have those kind of names where you and I came from. No, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Where did it go? Where did you lose it? Who took it? And how did he take it? What tongue did you speak? How did the man take your tongue? Where is your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What did the man do to make you as dumb? Who are you? You don't know.
Chinese person you were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch.
Who are you? You don't know.
So I think it gives a bit the tone of what I want to talk about. It's about reclaiming our identity and why are we stripped out of our identity through international adoption. So I go this, is it this way? Is it, I don't know, can I? Oh, before, up. Okay, all right. So, sorry. So I want to talk about Korea simply, like when did this start? 5,000 years ago? And Korea is so proud of their own history, but there is also a peninsula that survived many invasions from China, from Japan, and others. So it's like known as the Hermit Kingdom. And it's my birth country, and I feel very connected to it. And so I want to talk about the lack of connection we have and social support from the Korean society to in Korea and why we are sent overseas. I had the chance to live in Korea long enough to have this feeling of jong. I don't know if some Korean who lived in Korea had this experience, but it's very strong for me. And that's something that I was not looking for, but I'm really happy to have felt that. So here is like, when did it start? It started right after the Korean War. So it was the reason of why international adoption started to Caucasian families is because the Korean mixed race children were sent to their fatherland because Korea is a Confucianist country, and then the children belong to the father. So it was the first reason why they did that, and a good excuse to send after 160,000 officially, but we believe more 200,000 adoptees overseas. So it's been more than 65 years of practice. So it's a good business for Korea. It brought a lot of money and foreign money to Korea. So it helped Korea to make the 88 Olympic Games. It helped a lot in getting back in shape, I would say, in the price of their own children. So that's the number. You can see some numbers. Advertising made how to adopt a kid. And just is simply in the newspaper, you could adopt the kid like you can buy a Samsung TV or cell phone. That's how I feel about how marketing, to market a child, how easy it was. So I want to go back for about the feeling that, and maybe make understand Korean, the real Koreans, to understand the feeling that we have. And they have this feeling of betraying, of losing their culture, being forced to learn another culture through the occupation of Japanese. And I don't think that Koreans felt very good about that. That's a position where I want them to remember. So how we as adoptee had to deal with the Western countries, in the Western country, where we impose us a new culture, a new way of doing and being. And so that's what I want them to keep in mind. It's not a very joyful feeling, and I feel that we need reparation and official pardon. That's something I really dream, of course, and really believe that as Koreans have been colonized bodies, we also, as being adopted overseas, being colonized. So there's something food for thought. I guess not everybody agree on that, but I think psychologists and we really, and anthropologists will agree with that. I'm just an artist, so that's all I can give as example. So I feel, so as I said, that there are some picture here to show like the numbers of adoptees per year from here, from Holt, every year how many adoptees would be sent overseas. And then after here, claiming some justice in 2005, I think it was first a talk at the government, and then still adoptees fighting for their right. So that's a movement that started really in 1996, I would say, with my association called KOA, Korean Overseas Adoptees, that we first start to think we need a special visa for adoptees, we need more right to open record information. And then I think because I came in Korea in 93, helping first finding my birth family in 91, then helping other adoptees, I found many how would I say, hidden information, behaviors that are not very respectful to adoptees, and many other situations where I felt ashamed of being Korean, the way that they treat adoptees returning to Korea, to learn about their background or getting just information that I guess we all believe that we have right to get. So here is to show some adoption file, because it's been since 1991 that I've been working on adoptees search. I think what is very specific to overseas Korean adoptees, it's really the search. It's not especially coming back to Korea. For some who don't feel like that, or finding birth family, but having information. So this is my adoptee case. I was not born in 63. I was born in 68. But on my adoption paper, it was written I was born in 65. So all the messed up. Anyway, my name is not my name. My age is not my age. My orphanage is not my orphanage. So it's so many information that been justified adapted for my adoptive parents' needs. So here I show what normally the first here, if you see, is the file that we get when we are adopted, that the adoptive parents receive, and maybe the adoptive association in your adoptive country receive. And then in the file, you have a photo of you normally with some information. And this example for this person, she had some paper written in Korean, but not translated neither in French, Flemish, or English. And so she didn't know what was written in it. She was adopted at 5 years old, so she had memories, even though she said to her father, adoptive father, that she remembered. Her father said it's not possible because she was an orphan. So after she contacted me, and that's how I found that page of paper in her adoption file, she thought it was useless because she couldn't understand and nobody understood. So this is the file I built from what she got. And 20 years later, she asked me again to find her birth family, to search for more information. And then she lost that paper. So it's very interesting how adoptees also sometimes have some part of the file, sometimes lose it. Either the adoptive family don't give it to the adoptees. And so this is very tricky, where the full file is staying is in the adoption agency in Korea. But because the adoption agency in Korea has the monopoly, the control of your file, you not always have access to every pages. So here it's like when I did search, I was volunteering. I had a job that helped me to get a little office in Seoul, and in my free time, I would go with adoptees to places where they need to go. So there it was in Namwon orphanage, and normally people don't know that we still have information, but in Namwon they still have the information when an adoptee was found. And so this is the page where the adoptee was found that is not reported to the adoption agency. So that's losing information on the way, and I think that can be solved. But because the adoption agency don't want to work closely with the orphanage that still have some information, and even though the orphanage is not called an orphanage but a baby home or a children's welfare home, they still have those files, as you can see here. It's like in many more places that you think. So, and here it's like in City Hall. In City Hall, they still have many information also. So in those files, you can see that they order per year, and it's very well kept in Busan City Hall. And you also have the Seoul Baby Home. you in Yangje, you still have many information that you don't have, especially in the adoption file that is not reported. So it's so many information lost on the way that for me it's like so unresponsible for the adoption agency, because they don't care, they don't make money out of it. So here is the page where in that file you have a first sheet where they say where the child was found or whatever, but sometimes on the back of that page you have a note that is not reported also in the orphanage sometimes. So in city you have information, in the orphanage you have information, and then in the adoption agency in Korea you have information, but not all are connected. And then you lose also when your adoption agency in your adoptive country just keep what they want. So I don't know if you understand well what I say, but it's a lot of lost information on the way. And just because it's not a point, it's not useless for the adoption process, that they don't care about reporting everything. And I think it's our right to know that. That's what I feel. And so here is also a good, if you want the PPT or the PDF after, you can receive if you ask me. Here you have just in French, it's written to, I hope that everything is arranged as you want. It's a letter to my adoptive parents. So everything is made to please them. And here is the bank account of my my adoptive father, how much he's making money to prove that he's able to adopt me. Then here, if you see the social history you have in KSS, you have in Social Welfare Society, you have in Eastern, it's all the same kind of model. Social background, social history, initial history, it's like all this kind of title, but that page is the most important page in your file, because whatever is written here is your name or whatever is fake, or but sometimes on the second or third they say how you were found, and sometimes it's reported, but sometimes it's just written found in the police station, but it's not found in the police station, but it is written for you to be able to be adopted. But sometimes when you find later that information, I think we need to have the information from City Hall, from the orphanage, that is not written there all the time. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. This is the one who it's like two ways to be adoptable. It's one way is like you are relinquished to the adoption agency by a member of your family or whatever, or you were officially abandoned in the street, which is not really true, because sometimes you were just brought to the orphanage, but because the orphanage is fighting with the orphanage is fighting with the adoption agency to not pay whatever is like, it's a big business anyway. So this page here, you have also information from City Hall in Busan, and that's the letter that my grandmother wrote about to me, that was not reported in my adoption paper, that was not written in my orphanage also. And in my orphanage, in social history, it's written that I'm from St. Mary, but in fact, I was from Sowa. So it's two different orphanages, but it's like, if I didn't check all the paper, all the pages, sometimes you don't, you really have to read between the lines and really check every fact, because it's like, it's a bunch of lies. And so that's how we have to build an identity on. So no wonder some people really cannot make it. And here it's like now you have the adoption agency. So the confidential information, this is a blank page that, I mean, I erase all the thing, but this is what you have normally at the time. But now when you go to hold, they just give that page. And they say they don't have more file information about you, but it's not true, because the file are in Ilsan and they're too lazy to get the file from Ilsan sometimes, depending the mood. It's like on the, it's like not profiling, but it's like oh, today I'm in a good mood, I give you your information. Or today I'm not in good mood, I don't give you your information. Or maybe because if they hide something from you, it's because they have more information. So if they're very nervous and aggressive, it's because often they have something to hide. So that's something how you can read a meeting with the social worker in whole. I will not blame especially the social worker who try their best, or they are so controlled by the adoption agency policies that you cannot do anything against that. But this is a moment where I felt going with many adoptees, that's the moment where we break down, because it's really an emotional moment that you discover all your information and someone is hiding from you even more information. And that feeling is really bad, I feel. And so that page here is a page that you received at the time it was scarce. It's all digitalized, but they ask information that's really not relevant for the search, really. It's for their own information. And they don't even ask if you have a birthmark, if you have any souvenir, if you have, you know, like I had an adoptee who remembered that she doesn't know about Korea because she had no memory, but she remember a woman with a white dress. It means that maybe her mother was great. Comment on dit ça? The father died, and then she went to a funeral. So that's the connection. And then after, when she found her birth family, she found that picture. I mean, that image that she had in her mind for so long, but she couldn't explain it. So it's so many like things as an adoptee, especially if you are a bit older, that often we reduce your age to be able for you to go to school in the West. And so you have memories, but you don't know if it's sure because it can be a dream or not, because you have no connection with what your souvenir is because you're in the West. So that's something why I feel that international adoption is harder, because you lose all the sense and souvenir that can help you to maybe remember something of yourself from before. And so the last page here is from City Hall, how now they digitalize your information. I show you before how it was, and now how it's reduced to those simple facts, but they don't have picture of you. Even you have a picture from the orphanage, they will not put it in City Hall. So it's like so many information lost on the way. Again, more you digitalize, more they are lazy, I guess. And if you are lucky that the person is like not too tired after drinking so much the night before, that the information is right also. So you know what I mean? It's like that's my experience in Korea. And so this is why I think you understand adoptees can be very angry, and how we can call birth mother, and people feel it's not birth mother but natural mother. So the name and the words are very sensitive for some people, and I think we have to respect how to adoptees how they want to feel and talk about the first mother, natural mother, or birth families, and so on. And adoptive, some people, their adoptive parents are just their parents, and it's very fine too. So am I on time? Okay, I don't know. So that's how I want to talk about more the visa issue. That when I was in '93, I was a simple foreigner in Korea, and I didn't think about the visa situation, and just I could study Korean, but because I'm so bad in language, I did twice my first class of Korean, twice the second, just to stay longer in Korea and to be able to. So they said that Korean adoptees are so stupid, they don't learn quick enough, but it was a way for me to stay also longer. And so from the that situation where every 3 months I had to leave Korea, I understood that maybe we are more entitled to have better right than just being simple tourists. So at some point, because I met someone whose name was Cho, my adoptive Korean name is Cho Mi-hee. So he said, okay, you my family, you my cousin, so you can have the D4 visa, and then, but after a while, after 2-3 years, it was not enough for me, and so that's why in '96, with KOA, Korean Overseas Adoptees, I start to get, with the help of Health Welfare Society, with Park In-sun and Baek Hyun-ho, we try to build a petition to get the right for adoptees. We heard that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was thinking of a visa for Kyopo, for the diaspora of Korean born after or left after 47. And then all Korean adoptees were born in Korea, so we could prove that. But then after, we were all sent after 53. So we would be eligible, but they didn't think of us. So we wanted to make sure that the word Ibiang was in the bill and the law. So in December 1999, we received the first F4 visa that led us to stay 2 years in Korea, and we could work with other working permit. So that's how, this is the campaign we did in 1999 in May for Children's Day, the May 5th, and we had a campaign called Alien Awareness. So we were the alien with the 2 other adoptees, Kate Hurst. I don't know if you know her, Kate Hursley now. She's here with an Najuma in Chicago. We did it in Korea at the Maronier Park. And then we did again in Chicago at the Korean Festival to get even more signature. We did also at the Korean American Museum where we had a show. So we also make an awareness to the overseas Korean diaspora. And so the F4 visa looked like that at the time. So it was the first F4 visa for me, it's very precious. And then after, I think in 2012, you could get the double citizenship, right? So, oh, sorry, I had so many more stuff to say, but sorry. But I will give you, I leave you with those questions. So I think I hope Korean social worker, Ministry of Health, Welfare, Family, Birth Mother can find solution to make our life better and for hope to end international adoption. Because if adoption is so good, why aren't we all adopted then overseas? If adoption is so great as they say. Thank you very much for listening to me. But I don't know. Voilà. Sorry for the.
네. 나의 모국 한국에게라는 기조발제 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for your keynote speech with the title of the To Korea Mother Nation.
뜻인 것 같아요. 그래서 말씀 안에 있는 내용들 중에서
And by listening to her keynote speech, probably I really hope that all the suggestions and the recommendations will be really tangible in the future. For the session 1, with the title of the issues of records and identity, we are going to invite the 5 speakers for the first session. We are also joined by overseas adoptees as well as domestic adoptees to share their testimonies. Please keep the time within 10 minutes for your presentation. For the conference today, we are not going to have the Q&A after each presentation, but at the end of today's conference, we're going to have the Q&A session. So please keep holding the questions if you have during the presentation. And Jenny Na, or La Gyeongja in Korean name, we're going to introduce the speakers for the session 1. Thank you.
It's so nice to be here with all of you. My name is Jenny Na, and I'm a member of the planning committee for today's conference. Our first session is Adoption Justice, Issues of Records and Identity. People tend to treat adoptee stories as public property. Have you found your family? Is often the first question an adoptee is asked, as if it costs nothing to give the story away, as if it's not a reminder of an identity unknown, even to the adoptee. But if family is something to be found, then should it not also be seen as a loss? These are stories of records switched, details altered, identities erased, and new ones created. They illuminate just a fragment of what goes on in a system that for so long has been allowed to conceal the truth, as well as the impact on everyone whose life has been disrupted in its wake. In each of these stories, there is an underlying question. How was any of this possible? Through the generosity of our speakers, who sacrificed something of themselves by offering their stories here today, we hope to begin to correct the record. Our first speaker is Rebecca Jo Kinney. Rebecca is an interdisciplinary teacher and scholar of critical race and ethnic studies at Bowling Green State University in the US state of Ohio. Dr. Kinney is the author of the book, Beautiful Wasteland, The Rise of Detroit as America's Post-Industrial Frontier, and numerous articles that analyze the relationships between race, place, and belonging. She is also a Korean adopted person who grew up in Metro Detroit in the US state of Michigan. Her presentation is titled, Life of Paper, From Record Keeping to Justice. Our next speaker is Robin Joy Park. Robin is a queer, transracial Korean adoptee and a licensed marriage and family therapist who dedicates her practice to serving children, adolescents, and families particularly touched by foster care and/or adoption. Robin's participation in post-adoption services, including teen groups and mentor and mentee programs, living in Korea, navigating birth family search and reunion experiences, and DNA testing, have all deeply influenced and informed many of her professional perspectives. Her presentation is titled, Systematic Injustice, Switched Identities.
Hello and greetings to everyone in all different parts near and far of this world. I'm here in Los Angeles, so I have a little bit of a slideshow. Hope you can see that to go along. So in 2012, the adoption narrative and identity that I'd always known and suddenly changed. Throughout my reunion with my birth mother, a sensitive topic that was not talked about was the birth father. As I began to wonder more about him, I became curious to see what portion of my DNA he contributed. Conveniently, with my partner being a forensic scientist, he was able to assist with DNA testing, the birth family, and me. Little did we both know what the DNA results would ultimately reveal. At this point, after having been reunited with my birth mother for almost 5 years, I was devastated to learn that we did not in fact share the same DNA. There are no words to fully describe what it felt like to uncover this heartbreaking news. My coherent narrative that I thought to be true about myself based on my adoption paperwork suddenly vanished. All of the facts and figures that I grew up reading over and over again as a child, analyzing and imagining. She hates to take a bath, so she cries through bathing, but feels refreshed after finishing it. And she, Ju Young, was named by an intake worker, wishing to grow up beautiful and pure as glass beads, Ju, and flowers young. My glass beads shattered, and I felt broken inside and not quite sure of how to piece everything back together again. No longer was my identity Park Ju Young, born on August 22nd, 1982, transferred to Seoul on August 27th, 1982, at 2.6 kilograms. The relationship we had worked so hard to build across all barriers of culture and language appears to have been constructed around an incorrect set of information and documentation. The only truth was the new reality within a world that no longer linked us by blood. Both my adoption agency in Minnesota and in Korea were shocked by this revelation and did everything they could to not assist me, refusing to take any ownership or responsibility. It was isolating, and it was an experience that left me feeling heartbroken, confused, and struggling to make sense of things. Suddenly, I was back to wondering who my birth family was, only this time, not having any information to start from. Fortunately, GOAL, Global Overseas Adoptees Link, played a central role in assisting me and helping me navigate things. I will never forget the day in 2012 that we traveled down to Busan to share the news with the birth mother. I knew this was going to be quite possibly one of the most difficult conversations I may ever have. At this point in our relationship, I was not only in reunion with her, but also very close to a half-sibling and also had formed relationships with the grandmother and aunt and cousins. True to her character, the birth mother met the devastating news with grace and humility. Since then, our relationship has only remained through limited contact with her son. I can only imagine the pain and sadness she must also be feeling through this traumatizing experience and ambiguous loss. While it has taken some time to bounce back from this painful experience, I've continued to try and find my birth family. While I've been featured in different media outlets in Korea with the hope of finding them, so far the few leads that have surfaced have not led to a successful DNA match. Through my own experience and publicly sharing my story and reunion, I have also been able to connect and form close relationships with other adoptees who have experienced painful deception and betrayal. I've become aware of other adoptees and many of adoptees who have been incorrectly reunified, have had their paperwork switched, been sent in place of a different child, or have been provided false information about their identity. Switched adoptees have commonly discovered the information that was assigned to them in their file was either a switch file. So for example, the adoptee's entire file and identity is exchanged with someone else's information, such as my own, or a cover file, where maybe it was assigned someone else's identity, an adoptee is given false information, but not given another person's identity. To understand why switched identity cases happen, it is important to take into consideration some of the possibilities or reasons, including a child's health issues, a child not being fit to travel, healthy children replacing deceased children, caseworkers mixing up files, children being switched at various points of entry, including within foster care, en route to agencies, or during the transportation to their adoptive country. Regardless of how switches happen, it's disheartening to see how agencies have not been focused on family preservation and instead narrowly focused on efficient child placement. Aside from the personal impact DNA testing has had on my search and reunion experiences by revealing different information about my identity and records, it has also shed light on even more complexities within the systems involved with adoption. I believe with the implementation of increased DNA testing in the adoptee community, additional switch files will come to light. Subsequently, this has raised many questions surrounding the values, principles, and standards practiced within the adoption agencies. I believe a larger discussion and increased accountability is needed with stakeholders to better meet the needs of our communities. Adoption agencies facilitating reunions between adoptees and their family, then later proven not to be biologically related, can be and should be prevented. This could be as simple as including DNA testing in the process of family reunification to ensure a match before reuniting individuals. While I know this can be controversial, even the simple act of providing psychoeducation around the importance of DNA testing could help someone avoid being in the same uninformed position that I was as I started my search and reunion. DNA testing has the power to reunite families as well as reveal information that would otherwise not have been known. Therefore, we need to be prepared for anything. Additionally, we need to ensure agencies stop the practice of sending photos and information to both adoptees and birth family members and only releasing such sensitive information when everything is confirmed. Receiving pictures and other significant documents can have a huge emotional and psychological impact. Lastly, those who are currently in reunion, I strongly encourage you to consider taking a DNA test if you have not already. Yes, ignorance can be bliss, and some days I do wonder how my life would be different if I didn't do a DNA test. As much as I would love to still be living my dream of being in relationship with my birth family, I also don't want to jeopardize someone else's dream of being with theirs. What if you are Park Ju-young? What if you are in reunion with another adoptee's birth family as a result of your file being switched? This may mean having very uncomfortable conversations, and trust me, they aren't easy. I have come to realize the powerful ways DNA testing can impact our community, and we need to hold ourselves accountable since adoption agencies are not doing anything about it. These deliberate and emergent strategies can be life-changing and can radically shape and shift our future. Change is the constant force. How do we intentionally change the ways that grow our capacity to embody the just and liberated worlds we long for? As Adrienne Marie Brown, drawing upon Octavia E. Butler's work, notes in her analysis of the parable of the sower, I suspect that is what many of you are up to, practicing futures together, practicing justice together, living into new stories. It is our right and responsibility to create a new world. Here in America, our country is finally waking up and acknowledging the injustices that have systemically displaced Black, Indigenous, and people of color, designating us as dispensable. At the same time, we are witnessing the powerful accountability of institutions that have caused incessant violence and abuse rooted in oppression. We are at a unique moment in history, and I am inspired by the uprising happening through the Black Lives Matter movement, shaping, shifting, and dismantling systems of oppression. We have a lot to learn from this movement, and it is my hope that we can continue to reimagine things and create a new world. Korean adoption is also a direct result of systemic, institutional, and societal oppression. As we uphold and uplift our community and focus our attention on the voices of Korean adoptees, I hope that we can be agents of change and transformation. It is incredibly empowering and affirming to see the culmination of the Declaration of Adoption Truce Day. This year specifically, being able to address the inherent structural issues in the adoption program and the historical practice of distorting adoption records and the long prevailing culture of covering up these injustices. As we stand on the cusp of a possible future of change, we must not only address our communal and individual wounds, but promote adoption truths and imagine new structures. I don't want the Korean government's masks, care packages, or loaded promises. I want restorative justice. This includes repairing the harm that has been done to people, relationships in the community, and an acknowledgement that the Korean adoption system has failed to support adoptees and birth families. This will require cooperative, inclusive conversations between stakeholders and must include the individuals who have experienced the most harm being able to participate in finding resolutions. It is time we rise to this occasion to hold systems accountable. As I continue to think about what I need to change about my participation in these systems, I encourage you to do the same. We need to be willing to transform, evolve, and change. That is the most radical thing we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Our next speaker is Jaehyung Kim Stazacher. Jaehyung studied health economics at the University of Zurich and has been working for 10 years at the University Hospital Zurich in the finance department. For the past 8 years, he has been the president of Dongari, an organization for Korean adoptees in Switzerland. His presentation is titled Stolen Identity, Missing Roots.
안녕하세요. Hi, everybody. Oh my God, all the stories in session 1 are so crazy and so touching. Also, my personal story sounds unreal and incredible too, but the story happened exactly the same way I'm gonna tell you. My name is Jaehyung Kim Starsacker. Kim is not my last name. When I was about 4.5 years old, I came to Switzerland by adoption to a family who had already adopted a girl from Korea. My sister and I had quite a happy and carefree childhood, even if our Korean roots were not discussed in our family. The fact that we were of Korean origin was simply suppressed and ignored. Even the way I was named shows how my adoptive parents had no deal with Korean at all. If they had, they would not have given me one of the most common Korean surnames, Kim, as my given name. So after my first trip to Korea in 2010, which I explain in more detail later, I decided to use Kim as my middle name and my Korean given name as my first name. So after I got married, and when my first two boys were about 5 and 7 years old, Korea became a frequent topic of discussion. I started to deal with my Korean identity for the first time and realized that an important part of my identity was missing. To have to realize this was very painful. So in 2010, I decided to travel to Korea with my family for the first time since my adoption. So on my trip, I had beautiful and moving encounters. I always seen as a Korean, and I was also addressed in the Korean language, of course. Since I didn't speak Korean, except for a few words like 안녕하세요 and 감사합니다, people were irritated that I didn't understand them. And after I could clarify that I'm a Korean, but was adopted and grew up in Switzerland, they felt often very sad, sometimes also guilty. Often they apologized, but always they made me feel that I was very welcome. All these touching encounters gave me an incredible strength and courage. And I realized for the first time that an important part of me, my Korean identity, had been in complete darkness until now. Back in Switzerland, I decided to get in contact with my birth family. I went to Terre des Hommes, this is the organization that had arranged my adoption here in Switzerland, and asked for my file. Because the mother's name, her date of birth, and her last address were available, I asked Terre des Hommes to contact KSS, the Korean counterpart, and get in touch with my mother. Over the next 3 years, I was put off that KSS had not found my mother. In the end, it was said that 3 women had been contacted, but all of them said that they had not given a boy up for adoption. So in 2013, I decided to travel to Korea again and take the search for my birth family into my own hands. At KSS, the office manager confirmed once again that my search query had been unsuccessful. I was told that the information in my dossier must be incorrect. She explained that often the mothers or the person who put the children up to adoption had left false information about their identity. The question today is, why the heck was this practice tolerated? Why were the personal data not verified and correctly recorded? Was there no state supervision that could have ensured that it was handled correctly? And what is the situation now? So I traveled to Busan to start my own search. Thanks to many very helpful people who supported me. Pastor Kim was one of my greatest supporters. I finally met a very friendly employee of the local district office in Busan who was able to locate my alleged mother and contact her by telephone. I could hardly believe how easy it was, and the search was successful after only 3 days. But unfortunately, the story took a dramatic turn. The mother told the employee that she was the wrong mother, and that her son, Cheong Cho, still lives in Busan. I immediately realized that I was not Cheong at all. But what happened? Who was I? On the same day, Cheong's elder uncle came to the district office and I showed him my dossier of Cheong. He confirmed that all the information in the dossier was correct and said that his nephew, Cheong, lives in Korea. The following day, I received a phone call from Cheong's youngest uncle, so I met him for lunch at the same day, and he told me another incredible story. Jae-young's father and mother separated, so the grandmother decided to give Jae-young up for adoption. Shortly before the adoption and departure from Korea, the grandfather of Jae-young decided to bring his grandchild back home from KSS. So Jae-young grew up with his youngest uncle at his grandparents' house, and he was told that his mother was dead. From that moment on, Jae-young's mother pretended to be an aunt when she met her son. That's completely weird. And the whole family knew about the secret, only Jae-young, and Jae-young's mother husband knew nothing. And when Jae-young's husband died, which was at that time about 4 or 5 years before, it was revealed to Jae-young that his aunt was not his aunt at all, but his mother. That must have been an incredible shock for him. After all that I had experienced in such a short time, I was also in a shock-like state. But I began to realize that KSS had not told me the truth for years. How was it possible that KSS could not find the person and I could uncover the truth within days? Did they want to hide the fact that I was robbed of my identity and given away for adoption with the identity of another boy? With certainty that I'm not Jae-young, but with many open questions like who I am, what is my real identity, I immediately traveled back to Seoul and confronted KSS with my research. Probably because the office manager was plagued by a guilty conscience because she knew that she had withheld the truth from me, I was allowed to search my dossier in the archives for 2 days. According to Pastor Kim, it's something that has never been granted to anyone before. To my great disappointment, the search was unsuccessful. In the end, when I had no more hope, the office manager of KSS came with 3 folders of files where cancelled adoptions were obviously filed. And in this file, I found one dossier of a boy named Hyun-sik Kim, which was a very good match because of the photo, age, and description in the papers. In addition, the name Jae-young Cho was written in pencil in one place of the folder of this file. Obviously, there was a connection between the 2 switched dossiers. Was it mix-up? Was it intentional? If yes, what were the considerations or intentions behind it? Is my case an isolated incident or is there a systemic failure? At last but not least, who is responsible for this practice? 2 years later, I traveled to Korea again and tried to find my mother. Despite the great support of Professor Na, who I met in Switzerland, our efforts remained without success. Obviously, the information in Hyun-sik's dossier was not correct. However, my search is not completed yet. I'm certain that this dossier of Hyun-sik must be mine. I would love to meet my mother, my father, or my half-brother to find out what has become of their lives. Therefore, I still have hope, and there are some options that I have not exhausted yet. For example, I would like to start a search through DNA databases. Participation in a television program would also be an option. I would at least like to have answered the question of who is legally responsible for the confusion. If you see some more options, I will be grateful for any hint. Last but not least, I would like to meet the real Jae-young one day and give him back his file. With this step and hopefully with the certainty that Hyun-sik's identity is my own, I would like to discard my false identity like the name and the date of birth and assume my true identity for the rest of my life. Thank you very much for your attention. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Jae-hyung. 감사합니다. Our next presenter is Matthew Blessy. Matt is an adoptee from Truckee, a small mountain town in the US state of California. Originally from an arts education background, he started his professional culinary career in Korea as a way to build community, friendships, and family. He believes that food is more than just what's on the plate, and he is passionate about the intersection between good eats, identity, and politics. His presentation is titled, "They Lied to Our Mothers."
Hi, Jenny. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's good. First, I just wanted to thank the organizers for all their hard work in putting on this platform today. I can't even begin to understand the technology that goes behind all this stuff. But y'all are doing an awesome job in hard times. When thinking about sort of falsified records and how I guess I've processed and survived and thrived and through all of this, I think despite the sort of, systematic core untruths that a lot of the people have been talking about today that have impacted our lives, a big part of how I've gotten through all this, I think, has been the sort of rewriting, recreating, reimagining of my truth, my story. So I think this conference is like really sort of powerful reclamation of story and all the sort of nuances and complexities of it. So yeah, thank you again for that. And yeah, I'll go into my story here and try not to lose my shit. All right. My adoption file reads, the natural parents married each other for love in 1979. They were both college educated. They had one son. After their marriage, the natural father operated a construction business in cooperation with the natural mother's father. Unfortunately, their construction business operation was dishonored in the winter of 1985. Then the father-in-law, its representative, concealed himself, and the natural parents squandered their fortune. At last, they were divorced from each other. Under the existing circumstances, severe financial difficulties particularly, they were not able to bring up this baby. They referred the baby to Holt for adoption in consideration of their baby's more desirable future and happiness. My Korean mother was not college educated. She speaks the kind of English one knows from serving hands smoother than hers. Hello, how are you? How can I help you? In the only photo I've seen of her as a young woman, she is head to toe denim, white heels and 80s perm glorious, a look that says, I know how to belt it out at Noraebang. She talked to my father about putting me up for adoption. He told her he would take me to a temporary place to care for me. My mother decided she would raise me by herself. He told her I had died, and she believed him for the next 31 years. My American mother was told that my Korean mother was college educated. Is this how the adoption agencies tell their customers the mothers knew what they were doing when they gave us their children? She was told I had one sibling and was told that my Korean mother gave me up like letting go of something you wish to see grow. My Korean mother didn't want a better life for me. She wanted me. I thought I would never see my Korean mother. The adoption agency had sent a telegram, then gave up. Something about an empty storefront and an address with no occupants. A year later, the caseworker called me in the morning. I woke, annoyed to be awake, tired from last night's dinner service shift. Your mother wants to talk to you. Can we give her your number? The first time I spoke to my Korean mother was over the phone. I don't remember what she said. I remember her crying. I remember sitting and listening to her breath sparking in and out. I felt like I should speak, but couldn't. I felt like I should cry, but couldn't. I didn't know what she thought she had lost. I found out later she thought I was dead. For 31 years. My father told her I had died, and so she thought I was dead. My father took me to an adoption agency. She decided she wanted to raise me by herself, and when she asked for me back, my father told her I had died. She raised a daughter, a son, and another son who was not of her blood, but she raised him anyway and thought I was dead. She worked behind fryers at chicken shops and cooked chige for her children at home and thought I was dead. She spoke working class English and laughed with her sisters on holidays and never told anyone about me and thought I was dead. I went to America and learned Taekwondo and went to a camp for adoptees and had a crush on my counselor and wrote my name Matthew in Hangul and she thought I was dead. I got pretty good grades in English, fought my American mother about a Mustang I wanted to buy, even though we lived in a town that snowed every year. And when it snowed in Korea too, my Korean mother thought I was dead. Is this why the agencies tell us these stories? How would I have had time for girlfriends or college parties if I knew she thought I was dead? I did everything a good adoptee was supposed to. Poems and thesis papers. What do they mean if for 31 years my mother thought I was dead? Once, a year after we had reunited at my sister's house, when the alcohol and soju allowed the stories to spill out of my mother, she told me how my father had given my brother alcohol to quiet his crying, and how she found him in a puddle of his own vomit, and how she held him tight and took him away from there. I wonder if in that moment, if she thought she had lost another son. How do I tell her that I am not lost even when I am flesh before her? How do I tell her that I am full when all she wants to do is feed me? How do I eat enough to give me back to her? She's called me on every birthday since we've met. The last time she was crying again. She kept asking, "You're my son, do you know that? You're my son." I know now how to say I am, but when I say it, it feels like I'm trying to give her something that can't be given back. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Our final speaker in session 1 is Min-Young Chang. Min-Young Chang is a computer programmer and the co-president of Gungne Ibyeongin Yeondae, Domestic Adoptee Solidarity, one of the network organizations supporting today's conference. His presentation is The Impact of Missing Adoption Information on a Person's Life.
Good afternoon. I work in solidarity with various activists and groups and a computer programmer with 3 kids. I live a ordinary but not so ordinary life. My name is Youngchang Min. When I was 12 months old, I was secretly adopted to a domestic family. Secret adoption means that there is no official document or information regarding my birth. So before diving into my story, I will tell you a bit more about my story of adoption. So I was adopted to my parents when they were in their 40s. I was the only son in 3 generations, and I have heard a lot of compliments as I grew up. Before going to school, I was privately tutored by a schoolmaster on Hanja, the Chinese characters. And in annual family gatherings, my relatives would call my father godfather and treated me with courtesy by extension. So relatives in their 40s would call me a 10-year-old, their senior. And somehow very conservative environment that I grew up in. And the village that I lived in was a very small rural village with about 20 households. And so most of the residents lived close together and knew well about each other. And probably, I'm guessing that everyone except me knew the fact that I was adopted. I think I was about 8 years old, and there was a friend who used to be really close, and he suddenly said really mean things to me. And I thought, why? Why is he suddenly being so mean? I didn't really understand that situation, and I felt a somewhat awkward emotion. But looking back, I think that's when I first noticed people's perception towards adoption. I didn't know back then, but I think that was the moment. And then I first recognized the fact that I was adopted when I was 13. And my friend's father said in passing, "They're not your parents. Go find your real parents." And I don't recall the exact words, but that's what they said. And it may be a saying in passing, but that was a very important event for me. And I was confused, and I spent a lot of time thinking. And suspicion and anger grew towards my parents. So somehow that's when I began to think of adoption in a negative way. And for a child, parents have absolute authority, and the information delivered from the parents to the child, actually, it's very difficult for the child to verify and question the information. So they simply have to receive the information, and when they learn that the information they receive from such great authoritative parents have been distorted, how do you think they would feel? Probably lies and betrayal are the words that pop into your minds. Of course, my parents may not have wanted to do so, but that's what I felt back then. And as a child, it's very difficult to understand the concept of child rearing. So there were questions like this. How come the parents who gave birth to me are not taking care of me? Rather than questioning something like that, it was a little different. Why have I been abandoned? That was the biggest question that I had. And I think this kind of question is very natural for a young boy at such a situation. And in this process, I experienced inner conflict, and this led to self-denial. And in this process of self-denial, somehow I developed a rebellious attitude towards my parents in a very negative way. And I think my family members would have had a very hard time due to my rebellious attitudes.
Over time, when I was a teenager or youth, looking back the past, I thought that I had a lot of the awful or the choices or somehow foolish choices. Maybe I wanted to show my wish and not to have my existence be denied. I think that I really wanted to verify that I was also a valuable person. And of course, so I think that there may be some different circumstances and conditions for every adoptee. But despite the challenges, in terms of the identity, absolutely, I just wanted to identify the identity as well. So when I was in the college student and also worked in the society, I also got married and gave birth as well and had the children. Looking back the past, I thought that probably I was curious about my identity and my root because I thought that I really wanted to know. But I also had the turning point when I had a kid. My kid asked me, "Dad," and the kid asked the question. And then just after listening to the question, what about if for example, I just wanted to just know that how the birth parents and the birth mother would really feel when she really raised me, if she could. Because once I became a parent, I just wanted to also know the perspectives or the situations and circumstances. Because although I'm trying my best efforts as a parent, I was very wondering why my birth mother or father did not really raise up in the past. And I just wanted to get the clear answer from anyone else if I could. And by working in the society, and I just wanted to really know some clear answers, as clear as I could. So let me put this in one sentence. I could not really express how I really felt at that moment, but after thinking over and over again, and in terms of my root and my identity, I just wanted to ask a question to everyone if I could. I just wanted to my identity. And still I kept asking these questions in my mind. From where I was born and from where my identity was originated, all of these questions would just pop up in my mind. Because I was very angry and very frustrated without knowing my identity. And I just decided to find out my record, any documents or any reports, but I couldn't find anything. For example, some of the informations like some terms or the words or some age or the year of my birth, I just tried to discover and find my records if I could via the archive system or the libraries. I just visited the libraries to find out any information I could. But by experiencing those trials, I think that I was able to accept and understand my differences, and I became accepting and acknowledging my identity from the birth parents, and I think that I got healed as well. Because I think that information is very critical, very crucial for adoptees, including me as well. For example, from the hometown or any circumstances describing my hometown would be also very valuable information for me to find out my identity as well. But in the end, I'd like to also highlight that I think that absolutely I was very stuck in my life without knowing my identity as the social member. And by thinking of these feelings and these emotions as an adoptee, I believe that just looking back the past 50 years of the adoption, of course, many of things have been already improved, but still there's a long journey for us to further improve and solve those issues. And I think that we also need to put our efforts and deliver the information. And these are desired objectives, but we should not really make our children not feeling frustrated because they don't really know their roots and their identity. So I really hope that we could really deliver the future for the children with knowing their identity as clear as possible And the second point is that we also need to make sure that we have very specified the information. And we also need to think about the concept of the owner. I mean, the ownership on the documents and the record as well. Absolutely, the owner of that document, that the record should be the adoptee, himself as well as herself. We also should ask the question to all of us. And let me wrap up my presentation. Thank you. So as a domestic and overseas adoptees, we have listened to their testimonies from a total of the 5 speakers for the session 1. Of course, the many saying that they have gone through a lot of the challenges, but if we were not really adoptees, we could also not really be able to understand their feelings and emotions by 100%. But thank you very much for your the sharing on your testimonies. And now we have already been going through more than 2 hours already from the start of the international conference. And now we are joined by about the 170 participants via the online platform as well. And the maximum number, the 200 participants, have also reached and watched the conference at the same time. So taking these opportunities, we'd like to have the short break for 10 minutes. And then after the 10-minute break, until the 10 to 4, we are going to resume the session again. So let's be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.